"Hey old man over there, leave your beautiful wife behind and go out of the blue." It happened. 4 hefty thugs were lecherously looking down at my wife, almost salivating at her. In stark contrast, my youthful-looking and petite wife, who you wouldn't believe is over 40, was clearly attracting the attention of these young men. On the other hand, I, approaching my late 50s, have a look that's not quite fitting for my wife. Sometimes I'm even mistaken for her dad, which paints a picture of a rather plain-looking guy. Here, it seems I'm recognized as her husband. It might be a tad inappropriate given the situation, but there's a part of me that's a bit relieved. Since her younger days, my wife often caught the attention of men, so such flirtatious approaches are probably nothing new to her. But witnessing her getting hit on right in front of me is something I've never experienced, leaving me momentarily lost in thought. Ignoring them probably wouldn't make them back off, and shouting would be undignified for a grown man. They told me to leave, but as I remained in place, one of the impatient young men reached out for my wife. At that moment, she pushed his hand away, asking, "Are you ready for this?" Almost in harmony, the thugs voiced a collective hug, but the same words inadvertently came out of my mouth. Looking back, this incident became the catalyst for me regaining control over my life. My name is Bob. I'm turning 57 this year. At 6'3", I'm considered tall for my age group. I still have decent muscles, and while not exactly agile, I believe I have a good amount of dexterity. Thus, even if I get hassled by some pink, I'm not easily intimidated. The reason I still maintain a muscular physique at this age probably stems from my time in the military when I was younger. I served in the military, it seems at one point. I was deployed to a country long torn by civil war. There, under the orders of rebel forces, civilians engaged in gunfights, with even children exposed to danger daily. While the locals might have had reservations about trusting a foreigner like me, I did what I could, genuinely wanting to protect them, apparently. The repeated apparently and the uncertain details stem from a reason I lost my memory and my right arm there. I found myself waking up in a hospital bed when I started remembering things. Seeing myself covered in bandages was more painful than the actual physical pain, but beyond the pain, not remembering who I was even harder. Name. I can recall words I hadn't forgotten. I could understand. I knew the names of things I saw, and I understood the basics needed to live. But that was it. Who am I? Where am I from? Every trace of my identity had been wiped clean. How am I supposed to live now? Amidst the despair, my sole beacon of hope was my wife, Catherine. Throughout my hospitalization, she visited me daily, never missing a day. At that time, I wasn't married, and honestly, I didn't even know who she was, but she was always by my side. Even if you forget about me, it would be great if we could make a lot of memories from now on. That's what she told me. When I was discharged from the hospital, we get married and she took on my last name. Having lost part of my body and my memory not coming back, I naturally had no place in the military and had to be discharged. I was then given a large amount of compensation. It was enough money that if I was frugal I could live without working for the rest of my life. But I didn't want to just do nothing, so I started job hunting. There were limited jobs I could do since I lost my dominant arm and my memory. And I was rejected in several interviews. Eventually, a small cleaning company hired me. I was assigned to places where I could work even with one arm missing, like cleaning offices or schools. I couldn't remember my past, but my life was fulfilling above all. When I got home, my beloved wife Catherine was there. I decided that this is my life now and found happiness in spending the rest of my life with Catherine. At her suggestion, I retired at 55. Fortunately, we had enough savings to live comfortably in retirement, and Catherine also worked. I had planned to keep working as long as I could, but I decided to retire because I didn't want to worry Catherine. However, I didn't really have any hobbies, so once I retired, I had a lot of free time. If I had to pick something close to a hobby, it would be my daily walk. I started going for walks almost every day. It was a beautiful Monday morning that day. As usual, I prepared Catherine's breakfast and saw her off. After doing the laundry and some light cleaning, I left the house around 9 a.m. I guess you could call me a stay-at-home husband, since I mainly take care of the housework. It was a routine to stop by the grocery store on my way back from my morning walk to buy dinner. On my walking route, there's a large housing complex, and in front of it is a large park with no play equipment. My favorite spot was a bench in the corner where I always took a break. The European-style design of the park, contrasting with the open space of a typical American park, somehow made it feel cozy. Sitting on the bench, I pulled out a paper bag from my eco-friendly bag and began reading a mystery novel I had been in the middle of. Nice weather, isn't it? Around the same age, or maybe a bit older I guess, the man approached with a gentle smile and sent such a greeting. Yes, it's a nice day. I'm not particularly bad at socializing, but being a bit of an introvert, I often feel awkward talking to someone I've just met. I awkwardly repeated his greeting, but the man showed no sign of annoyance and pointed at the bench. Mind if I sit here? Oh, right. This is a two-seater bench, but I was sitting right in the middle with my bag next to me, leaving no room for anyone else. I'm sorry, my bad. I quickly moved to the edge of the bench and placed my eco-friendly bag on my lap. No worries, I just wanted to chat with you for a bit, he said as he sat down next to me. Chat with me, that's a first. Catherine enjoys my boring stories. But I can't remember anyone else ever enjoying a conversation with me, especially an older guy like me. Noticing my puzzled look, the man shook his head and tried to clear things up. Sorry for the sudden approach, my name is Jason. Jason, why do you? Before I could finish, Jason cut me off with a soft smile. You come to this park every day, right? I do too. I think it's great how there's no play equipment here. Don't you agree? I suppose it's more of a plaza than a park since there's no play equipment. But it's named Johnson Park, so I guess it's still a park. I'm not one to beat around the bush. Would you be interested in trying out some supplements? Supplements. I wonder if this man also sells health goods. Did he just happen to decide to pitch to a middle-aged man who seemed to enjoy sports? This is a simple, so I'm giving it to you for free. Please try it if you'd like. Despite his calm tone, Jason forcefully placed the pill in my hand. Well, it's probably fine to take it. If it's a free sample. I could always just toss it without taking it. At first glance, it just looks like any regular medication. Please do take it. I'll be here again, and I'd like to hear your thoughts as I'm dumbfoundedly watching Jason leave briskly from the bench. He suddenly looks back. See you again, Bob. At the same time he called my name. I grimaced from a sudden headache and I couldn't get Jason's gentle face out of my mind. Wait, did I tell him my name that night? When I told the story to Catherine, she told me to throw away the supplement you should change your walking route to. Seems like a dangerous person, best to avoid him. Catherine has a point. After all, only someone with a serious lack of judgment would take pills from anyone other than a pharmacy or doctor. Of course I don't intend to take it, but I'd feel bad faking it next time I meet him. I'm not good at lying. I'd probably give myself away. You don't have to meet him. He doesn't know where you live, right? I wonder. He didn't seem to know my name. If he knows my walking route and my last name, he could potentially find where I live. If you run into him by any chance, call the cops. He's definitely a bad guy. I have a bad feeling though. Catherine isn't a fortune teller and doesn't have any psychic vibes. Her hunches often turn out to be right. I know that even though it is only a hunch in her case, it should never be taken lightly. I took her advice and changed my walking route the next day. I even chose streets I had never walked on before, passing buildings I'd never seen. The novelty of these unfamiliar sights made me realize I had grown bored of my usual walks. even though I've been living in this town for over 10 years. There's so much I don't know. Watching the stream of cars from an overpass, I felt a sudden push from behind. I desperately grabbed onto the railing with my left arm as I almost fell over. When I looked around, there was no sign of the person who tried to push me crossing the railings and stepping onto the pedestrian overpass. I immediately sat down on the spot, having narrowly escaped death. I remained seated there until the trembling in my legs subsided. I was certain someone was after me a few days after that. Near fall from the overpass, flower pots falling from above, being pushed while waiting at the lights. I managed to dodge these threats, but what I couldn't forgive was someone trying to set my house on fire. Luckily, I noticed right away, and it was just a minor fire. But now there's a chance my wife is in danger too, so I reluctantly called the police. Of course they can't provide 24/7 protection, but they said they'd increase patrols and be ready to respond if anything happens. Having some surveillance is somewhat reassuring. Honestly, I'll be fine as long as Catherine is safe. That's all I care about. And then, for about a week things were peaceful. Maybe they got scared off seeing the police around our place. That's fine by me. As long as they stay away, it doesn't matter if they are caught or not. There's been no contact from Jason and no incidents either. Catherine seemed relieved too, and we resumed her normal lives. Then out of the blue, how about we take a vacation? I could get some extended time off. She suggested an overseas trip. Catherine's desired destination was Spain. We had discussed going there for our honeymoon, but given the uncertainty at the time, we decided against depleting our savings. Instead, we opted for a trip to Savannah, Georgia. During that trip, Catherine fell in love with Savannah and has visited there several times since. I assumed this time would be another trip to Savannah, but was surprised it was abroad. It's fine, let's go. We couldn't go abroad on our honeymoon. In fact, it's been almost 10 years since our last trip. I remarked. We both had jobs and rarely got time off together, so it had been quite some time since our last real vacation. Watching Catherine excitedly planning to buy new outfits and bags for the trip made me smile, and I too began to look forward to the trip. Traveling abroad? I glanced at my right arm, which was missing from the elbow down. Where had I been deployed? Catherine never liked discussing that period, so I never pressed for details. As such, I don't know where it was or what the conditions were like. There have been ongoing conflict, but I doubted it was Spain. Boarding a plane might bring back memories. Feeling a phantom pain in my missing arm, I brushed aside my negative thoughts. I began searching online for tourist spots in Spain and listing places I wanted to visit the following month. We proceeded with our travel plans as scheduled. Arriving at the airport 2 hours before a flight, we decided to relax in the lobby. A week-long stay. Though it wasn't my first time abroad, I'd lost my memories of it. It felt like the first time I hoped I wouldn't feel homesick. Apparently, the flight to Spain would be quite long. Not being great at sitting still for long periods. The thought made me dizzy. I'll get us something to drink, I told Catherine, and as we walked, she expressed a desire to explore the airport. Even in her 40s, she hadn't lost her childlike enthusiasm. Chuckling, I walked beside her as she cheerfully linked arms with me. Hey, old man, why don't you leave that beautiful lady and go home? A voice suddenly interrupted. A group of men stood directly in front of us. Startled, I stepped back, pulling Catherine with me. She stumbled and fell backward. I quickly knelt beside her, supporting her back, and looked up at the men asking. What do you want? Didn't you hear? Guess old folks have trouble hearing. One jeered, laughing loudly. What was so funny? We'll take care of her now. You can go, old man. With a shooing gesture, as if driving away an animal, one of the men reaches out to Catherine. However, Catherine forcefully pushes his hand away. Staring the men down with an uncharacteristically sharp tone, she says, Are you ready for what's coming? Huh. Not just the men, but even I was taken aback. Could Catherine have martial arts training I didn't know about? We've been together a long time, but I'd never heard of such a thing. But then again, maybe she had learned some when she was younger. Could it really be that a showdown is about to unfold right here? No way she wouldn't ruin the upcoming vacation. She was so looking forward to it, after all. Besides, I can't even imagine her getting into a physical fight. Does that mean it's up to me to step in? Stunned, I stare at Catherine's face and she stares right back. Her expression seemed a mix of emotions, hard to describe. Our eyes are locked for a few seconds, but suddenly Catherine looks away. Biting her lower lip, I can't completely understand the feelings of Catherine, and for some reason, the men don't seem to take any action either. The situation is in a stalemate, with everyone in the vicinity feeling awkward. Sorry, I apologize, but why are you apologizing? Confused, I tried to ask Catherine for clarification, but the men seemed to have run out of patience. Hey, don't ignore us like that. A man roughly grabbed my jacket collar and forced me to stand. His strength, coming from what appeared to be a nearly 65-pole frame, was just as imposing as he looked. One solid hit from those massive arms could knock anyone out. Come at me, man. Surprisingly, he let go of my collar and wanted a fair fight. What is he thinking? I can't even understand Catherine's intentions. I'm paralyzed with confusion and honestly, I don't feel like engaging. I can't imagine coming out of a fight with such a huge guy unscathed. Being close to 60, I know better than anyone how vulnerable my body is to impacts. Seeing my distress, the man did not hesitate and raised his first. Anticipating the damage to my left cheek, I cringe, but suddenly everything around me moves in slow motion. His right hand is slowly coming at me. Seeing his attack, my body reacts on its own accord. My left hand lands a counterpunch, almost like it's being drawn in, right into his left chest. The next moment he was lying in front of me, eyes rolled back. My heart is pounding. I tried to calm myself, but strangely, my mind was incredibly calm. It felt as if I wasn't myself, as if someone else had taken control of my body, making everything seem so distant. A woman's scream echoed from somewhere. She must have seen me knock the man down. Only then was I able to move again. I called out to the man foaming at the mouth, completely still, but there was no response, no breathing. I tried to feel for a pulse on his wrist and chest, but nothing. I turned white. Hey, come on, breathe. My attempts at CPR, done as best as I remembered, were to no avail. The man didn't budge it, with the other men just standing there in shock. Not knowing what to do, I continued, desperately trying to revive him. Please, please breathe. Excuse me, Jason. The guy who had given me some supplements at the park the other day pushed me aside as tears welled up in my eyes. He pulled out a machine from his bag. Maybe it's an AED or something. He placed it on the man's chest, hit a button, and the man's body jolted. A few seconds later, the man drooling came back to life. A nuck. He spat out saliva. And as if realizing what had happened to him, the man shivered. The men exchanged glances with Jason and left with a nod. Seems like they knew Jason. Still confused and shaken up, Jason smiled at me. Let's have a talk somewhere we can sit down and relax. I cancelled the trip. Neither Catherine nor I felt in the mood for a vacation anymore. I later explained the whole situation to the security officers who had arrived. Objectively speaking, I was the aggressor, so it'd be their duty to hand me over to the police. But the man I had hurt didn't press any charges. With Jason testifying on my behalf, confirming it was self-defense, I was let go without any legal complications. While we could have barely made her flight, neither Catherine nor I felt like we could enjoy the trip, so we decided to cancel. Taking Jason, who wanted to chat somewhere peaceful, we headed home. I had planned to meet him at a local cafe, but surprisingly, it was Catherine who suggested we talk at home. It was supposed to be the first time Catherine and Jason met. Given that Catherine seemed to detest Jason for giving me some sketchy pills, I wondered why she'd invite such a man into our home. After all, he had stood up for me during that airport kerfuffle, so maybe this was her way of returning the favor. Once we got to the house, we got straight to the point without any small talk. So, where should we start? Sipping the coffee Catherine had made, Jason shrugged with palms facing up. To be honest, I haven't a clue what's happening to me right now. If it's no trouble, could you first tell me who you are? Jason nodded slowly, with his eyes closed. Of course, my profession is a doctor. I've retired from active practice. And as for our connection, Bob, you were once my patient. Patient? Oh, when I was still in the military I had a severe injury and was out of it for a long time, so I don't remember who my doctor was. Looking down at where my right arm used to be, I begin to say about that time in gratitude, but Jason stops me. No need to thank me, I don't deserve it. What do you mean? Taking a deep breath, Jason slowly exhaled while looking up at the ceiling. What has Catherine told you about your past? How so? My past that I can't even remember. I told Jason everything. I remembered that I used to be a soldier, how I lost my right arm in the line of duty, and how I had no memories of that time. Throughout my explanation, Jason listened intently, a mix of sympathy and pity in his eyes. When I finished, he simply said, I see. Turning to Catherine, he asked, should I tell him the truth? Catherine remained silent, taking her silence as consent. Jason began to reveal the truth to me, urging me to stay calm throughout. Bob, first off, you want a regular soldier? You were part of a special OPS team. Wait, hold on. So you're saying I wasn't in the military, but in this special ops team? Then has Catherine been lying to me? Honestly, the details about my past, whether I was a soldier or part of some elite squad, didn't matter to me. But finding out Catherine might have lied was a shock. Catherine's silence seemed to confirm Jason's words. Please come down. I'm sure Catherine had her reasons for not telling you the whole truth. She wouldn't lie out of malice, right? Catherine remained silent, her face unreadable. While you might not immediately understand or accept this, let me continue. You were part of a team sent on a mission to quell a civil war in a certain country. As for who exactly commissioned this mission, only the top brass knew, so even I don't know the specifics. Anyway, you went to that country, and thanks to your efforts, the war ended. I was probably being praised, but the shock of Catherine's possible deception had me feeling like I was listening to someone else's heroic tale. I tried to stay engaged, but what Jason said next left me stunned. You were extraordinary. After all, you alone took the lives of 96 people. I must have looked ridiculous with my mouth hanging open. Perhaps Catherine was crying at seeing my reaction, but I couldn't tell. Of course, given the circumstances, you can't be compared to some random criminals. It's probably more accurate to say the past year. In any case, you neutralized enemy forces with overwhelming power. But at the same time, questions arose. Questions, Jess. Is there value and peace that comes at the cost of other people's lives? Taking other people's life. Yes, I had been prepared for the possibility, especially since I believed I had lost my arm in combat. But 96 people. That number was too high and I couldn't hide my shock. Bob, it's all in the past, you don't need to feel guilty about it now. But the main point is yet to come. I couldn't imagine anything more shocking. My breathing became erratic and my vision blurred. My brain, unable to accept reality, seems to be trying to escape by blacking out. Bang, with a loud noise, I slapped both of my cheeks. Tell me, please continue. I'll never run away. I'll face my past. Someone from the top of the organization has ordered that you who are injured and recuperating be taken out. White target my life. A soldier must not have individuality. That should be the same for any unit. If each starts questioning their actions, the chain of command, one function and the entire unit could fall apart. I'll skip the details due to the length. Firstly, the reason you got injured was that in battle you showed such an overwhelming presence that the remaining enemies couldn't tolerate. From a momentary lapse in judgment, you were ambushed by multiple enemy soldiers and lost your right arm. I felt a pulse in my upper arm. The local hospital was ill-equipped, and the treatment given was only temporary. Had you been just an incompetent grunt, you'd probably have been left to die. But the organization wouldn't abandon you, their hero, unconscious. You were immediately transported to the US. That's when I met Jason. I underwent a surgery. And although my severed right arm wasn't restored, I managed to survive, it seems. Had I already lost my memory by that time? It's a natural assumption. Due to severe physical injury, my brain must have received a significant shock and caused memory loss. Makes sense. No, you still had your memories because the one who stole them was none other than me. War, Jason. Why? Jason, rubbing his forehead and with hesitation, said, I had no choice. You seem to have headed to close friends about leaving the unit, and a man who heard of this reported it to the higher-ups. I don't know the details of how the decision was made to deal with you, but they probably considered you a potential risk just for hinting about leaving the unit. Given it was a secret unit, they probably had various secrets and there might have been concerns about a leak. But there was someone who opposed your removal. He was your superior, citing your achievements and character. He begged for your life. Of course he was turned down, but he persisted. In the end, at the cost of his own life, he saved yours. So you're saying he died in my place? Jason looked genuinely regretful and nodded deeply. That man was. Jason's gaze shifted to Catherine's father. Without thinking, I stood up from my chair. A mug fell over, spilling coffee, but no one seemed to care. Catherine, it was mind-blowing the thought that my beloved wife's father died because of me, given his sacrifice. You were saved, but it wasn't as simple as letting you go free. They asked me to erase your memory, but erasing memories isn't as easy as it sounds. After trying various methods, I finally got a drug that could induce amnesia. It's obviously illegal though, so I was made to drink that and lost my memories. Physically, you recovered well. Regarding memories, it might sound insensitive to say smoothly, but we managed to erase them without issues. And once you were fit to be discharged, you were united with Catherine, the daughter of your former boss, and led a happy life. Jason, ending the story with a deep emotion, stared intently into my eyes. Now, why did I appear before you? Now? It's to observe your condition. So you came to check if my memories are indeed gone. Jason clapped his hands and nodded exaggeratedly. You are quick to grasp. Exactly, but isn't that contradictory? If your job is to ensure my memory is gone, why tell me all about the past? Jason grinned mischievously and said. You really catch on fast. It's simple, the organization you belong to wants your memories permanently gone, so all you need to do here is drink the amnesia rug again. But if I suddenly told you to drink this, you'd find it suspicious, wouldn't you? Like when you discarded the supplements I gave you earlier. That's why I decided to be transparent and have you drink it willingly. After all, it'll be erased from your memory anyway. Why not spill the beans about the organization here? So Bob, if you take this, everything will be resolved. With a wink, Jason presented a single pill in his palm. This is the memory erasing drug. Yes, it's a safer version than the one you took before. Go on, take it. Jason forcefully placed the pill in my hand. He saw it, saying, Phew, and drained his cup of coffee. After all the talking, his throat must be parched. This lifts the weight off my shoulders. If I take this, I'll forget about Catherine. What's more, I might even forget who I am. Played by this fear, I stared blankly at the pill in my palm. You want to spend a peaceful retirement with your wife, don't you? A smart man like you understands what I'm getting at, right? Do I have no other choice? After all, it's rather audacious for someone like me, who's taken so many lives, to now wish for my own happiness. Moreover, if taking this pill ensures no harm comes to Catherine, then losing my memory seems a small price to pay. But I'm sorry, I can't take it. Come on, Bob, after coming this far, don't get cold feet living your life constantly under surveillance. I don't want to lose Catherine. Not even my memories. Catherine has always stood by me selflessly. Even if she lied, it's not a big deal. I believe she did it for my sake. Besides, I'm certain she isn't the kind to use people for her own benefit. Above all, she's not the kind of woman who would condone being saved at the expense of someone else's sacrifice. That's why I trust her. I'll even forgive her lies. I don't know what this organization plans for us, but I'll protect her with all I've got, even at my age, with a body that hardly moves. Moreover, I'm missing an arm. There's little I can do. Honestly, I'm not confident I can protect Catherine to the end. But I can dedicate the rest of my life to her, to spend my life with her till the end. Oh, choke. Suddenly, Jason began to vomit. While I was shocked, Catherine remained calm. Is this finally I've fulfilled my promise? As Jason glared at Catherine, she returned his gaze coldly. How does your own medicine taste you? Where did you get this? You don't need to know. You'd forget even if I told you. Cursing, Jason riffed in pain for about 10 minutes before passing out. After a while, Catherine, who had been looking down at Jason, turned to me, shedding a tear. It's over, finally, I'll tell you everything. He just wanted to test his drug. An hour later, Jason woke up, not remembering who he was. I took him to a local police station saying I found this elderly man wandering around and let the rest to the police. Considering the drug's effects, I doubt he'll have a peaceful retirement. When I got home, Catherine, who had cleaned up Jason's mess, was waiting. Most of what Jason said was true, but some things were different. She had apparently learned about my situation from her father. The organization initially wanted to use me in a support role after I got injured and was no longer fit to be a soldier. However, Jason opposed that. He was eager to test his drug on me, suggesting to erase my memory and then expel me from the organization. Jason, it seems, had relatives in the higher-ups of the organization, and due to their influence, his opinion was accepted. So I became a guinea pig to prove the effects of his drug. Just before taking the drug, I cleverly crushed it in my hand and ingested only half a bowl. Realizing this, Catherine approached me, drooling and feeble, and took the half pill from my clenched hand. As my consciousness became cloudy, I stared at Catherine. She told me that she swore vengeance upon Jason through her determined eyes. It turns out Catherine's father had also died because of Jason's malicious advice. Catherine's father, who had opposed making me take the unknown drug till the end, was literally axed under the pretense of taking responsibility for his subordinates. Between her father and me, Catherine held a deep-seated resentment towards Jason. But then we got married and lived peacefully while Catherine considered forgetting everything and living quietly together. Deep down, she wished I wouldn't lose my fighting spirit or thirst for vengeance. She wanted us to confront and take down our enemy together. But her internal struggle of not wanting to taint my hands any further has tormented her for a long time. Then the opportunity came. Having been on the lookout, Catherine managed to invite Jason to our home and accomplished her goal. I'm sorry for lying. You must be disappointed, but I just couldn't forgive him, especially Jason. I'd understand if you'd want a divorce, Catherine said with a forced smile. Listening to her shaky voice, anyone could tell she was putting on a brave face. Not just me, I told Jason too. I don't blame you for lying, Catherine, and I would have wanted to avenge your father, who defended me to the end. Although I sadly don't remember it, I can't recall the emotions of that time or her father. Still, I must have found it absolutely unforgivable. She's not a part of the organization, so she doesn't know the details, and apparently her father only told her about how I was treated. I may have lost my right arm and my past memories, but now I have my left arm in you. That's more than enough for me. With my only arm, I hugged him tightly. Feeling her slender, fragile body sobbing in my embrace made her seem so vulnerable. Jason's situation became a minor news story. Although his real name wasn't disclosed, Jason was seen wandering around in an obvious state of confusion, and it garnered some public interest. For some reason, the media tracked down my address as the person who found him, but I declined all interviews and maintained my silence. It's only natural for me, the person involved, not to comment, but it makes me wonder why after taking the same half pill, I only lost my memory while Jason lost his entire sense of self. But it's pointless to ponder it now. Catherine and I have continued a healthy marital relationship. We even went on our long-anticipated trip to Spain, enjoying our first ever overseas journey as a couple. Catherine mentioned excitedly that she wanted to visit every country in Europe. Even if we visited one country a year, we'd have to live past 100. But living a long life just to see her smile, once you can move, sign this paper quickly. All right. Lying in a hospital bed connected to medical equipment, my wife handed me a divorce paper. I never want to see her face again. How cold-hearted can people be? What were those 3 years of marriage about? I watched in shock as my wife walked out of the room. When I woke up, I saw an unfamiliar ceiling. It wasn't the ceiling of our bedroom at home or the break room at my usual office. The beeping of an unfamiliar machine was steady. I tried to speak, but no voice came out. What happened to me? The moment I remembered, I let out a scream. It was the terror of that moment. Robert. You're awake, Robert. I heard my mother's voice close by. She hastily pressed the nurse's call button, telling the nurse I had regained consciousness. Tears streamed down my mom's face as she kept saying thank God. Still dazed, I tried to recall that day. My name is Robert Johnson and I turned 32 this year. I've been married to Catherine for 3 years. That day was our wedding anniversary. Catherine and I, on her request, had taken a long trip after a long time. On the way back on the freeway, I was the one driving. I always drive safely and was doing so that day. The nightmare began just after leaving a rest area. I heard the sound of sunbreaking and then a truck came hurtling towards us with tremendous force. It also dragged the 2 cars nearby with it. I tried to swerve, but everything happened too quickly. We are involved in a major freeway pileup. My memory stopped there. I don't even know how many days have passed since a doctor, presumably the one in charge of me, appeared and began to ask me a few questions. As we spoke, I fully regained consciousness. I learned from the doctor that I had been unconscious for 2 weeks. I also found out that the drivers of the other 2 cars involved have passed away. I'm grateful to be alive. While listening to the doctor, I searched the room for Catherine. If Catherine was with me during the accident, she must be injured too, maybe even more seriously than me. Mom, where's Catherine? My voice was raspy, but my mom said she's okay. Apparently, her injuries were less severe than mine and she could even walk. She was undergoing some tests and couldn't come to see me. She promised she'd let Catherine know I was awake. Relieved by my mom's words, I suddenly felt pain everywhere. It's a sign that my body was trying to heal. I was told that I need to stay in the hospital for treatment and rehab for about a month and a half, and I felt guilty about my colleagues at work. However, both Catherine and I are alive. I decided to think of that as a blessing. Even days after I regained consciousness, and never visited me in the room. I still can't walk on my own and can't make it to Catherine's hospital room by myself. Once, while I was asleep, she must have visited me, leaving a note that read "Get well soon." I wish she had woken me up, but I appreciated her kindness and not wanting to disturb me. I've got to get better soon so the two of us can go home every day. That's all I could think about. I worked so hard that I even wanted to pat myself on the back, and I recovered faster than the doctors had expected. Just when I thought I might finally be able to walk by myself, Catherine suddenly appeared in my room. I knew she was in the same hospital, but we never crossed paths, not even in physical therapy. I was slightly worried that she was deliberately avoiding me by scheduling her therapy sessions. In different times, I'd heard that Catherine's injuries were minor compared to mine, but she looked pitiful, her arm in a cast. I want us to get divorced soon. It's a hassle having to deal with this accident, she said. She handed me a document. It was a divorce paper, just like the ones I had seen on TV shows. Catherine's name was already signed. Catherine, who I had not seen in a while, looked like a stranger. What do you mean divorce? Trying to sort out the situation in my confused mind was making my head hurt. I couldn't believe it and I held my head in my hands. She left the divorce paper on the table and walked out, her heels clicking on the floor. Once you can move, submit it right away, she said in a voice so cold it was unlike anything I had heard from her before. She left those words behind and walked out of the room. I just sat there in shock and able to say a word. The divorce paper rustled on the table. The events of just moments ago were not a dream. It was a discomforting noise that drove the reality of it home. The sudden divorce paper. It was more than I could handle. I discussed this with my mom who had come to visit me. I thought she would surely be on my side, but she began saying that if it had come to this, I should get a divorce. Catherine and my mom had a relationship like close friends. If the subject of divorce had ever come up, I thought she would certainly have stopped it. So I was surprised she even said that she didn't want me clinging to the other party even after they had handed me the divorce paper. Perhaps my mom felt that her son was being neglected. It meant that I had no allies in this matter and able to move freely. All I could do was despair. Catherine never appeared before me again, proving that this was no bad dream. Thank you for everything. When I was discharged, the physiotherapist, nurses and doctors who had been in charge of me all came out to see me off. I was handed a bouquet of flowers at the entrance and felt like crying. I have been a mess since Capper and left me. I hated everything, even the physical therapy. Everyone stuck with me through thick and thin, putting up with me, and I felt humbled. It seemed everyone knew why I was in such a state, especially during the therapy sessions. I was a real nuisance every day. They persuaded me who had started to say that I didn't want to do the therapy when I was being stubborn, saying that I didn't need to do the treatment. A younger scolded me harshly. I feel lucky that I was brought to this hospital. I started to drag my leg a bit, but that's no big deal. A new life is waiting for me. I stepped out firmly, leaving the hospital behind me. Coming home after so long, it was eerily quiet. Catherine's belongings were moved out, yet the tidiness was evidence she had cleaned up before leaving. I still had the divorce paper and able to submit it. I fought about throwing it away, but I didn't have the guts. I didn't want Catherine to dislike me for disposing of the divorce papers still hung up on her. I guess my coworkers were eagerly awaiting my return from the hospital. I became a burden because of my prolonged hospital stay. I started working hard, trying to accept my new life without Catherine. What lab work? I could forget her absence, working until I was exhausted. I only went home to sleep. On my days off, I aimlessly wandered to places we used to visit together. In the midst of this routine, I got a call from a lawyer claiming to be Catherine's representative lawyer. They wanted me to submit the divorce paper as soon as possible. I invited them to my house to discuss it. Apparently, and wanted the divorce finalized quickly, maybe to be prepared for when she left. She had given the lawyer 3 copies of the divorce papers written in her own hand. Seeing those divorce papers, I made up my mind to submit them. I didn't want to do anything that Catherine would dislike. She wanted it so badly, I told myself, and forced myself to accept and submit it. With that, Catherine and I officially became strangers again. Even though we were officially divorced, there was no significant change in my life. I worked, slept, and on my days off, retraced my memories with Catherine. Friends and colleagues suggested I should remarry, but I couldn't think of such a thing yet. I was introduced to some people at social drinking events, but my heart wasn't moved at all. Then a huge shock hit my daily life on a Sunday when I was supposed to work, but it was cancelled. I was retracing my memories with Catherine as usual. Cherry blossom season. The cherry blossoms at the park we used to visit for our annual picnic were in full bloom. Several groups were enjoying the cherry blossoms. I sat on a bench on the edge of the park and took out a can of beer. We visited this park several times until the cherry blossoms had all fallen. With a beer in hand, I gazed at the cherry blossoms. Nothing had changed from the previous year. It seemed like I was the only thing that had changed. I took a sip of beer inside. That's when I noticed. On a bench diagonally opposite me across the cherry tree, there was Catherine looking up at the cherry tree. Her very short hair had grown longer. She looked a bit thinner, but there was no way I could mistake her for someone else. As I sat there in shock and able to speak, Catherine noticed me. Our eyes met slowly. Highly pale eyes, which I remembered well, caught mine. Just as I was about to call out Catherine, she gave me a slight nod. I froze at her formal gesture. It was a clear rejection of me. I was at a loss for what to do. Without any sign of surprise, and bowed her head to me once again. Catherine, let's head home. A strange man's voice made me startle. Looking in the direction of the voice, I saw a man I didn't recognize. He was in a basketball uniform with a ball in his hand. He's a guy who was practicing under the hoop just a moment ago. Catherine, when called by her name, opens a white book on her knee. The cover is blank so it might be a diary. When she looked up after confirming something, she smiled at the young man. John, let's go home. Catherine swiftly entered winder arm with the young man's. John, as he was called, was gently pushing in away, saying annoying, and laughed off being shunned. It was like when we were dating and I'm left in a daze. Was he the reason for our divorce? Did we divorce using an accident as an excuse? I silently watched the two leaving the park. I couldn't possibly chase them and question them. Since the day I saw Catherine at the park, I couldn't concentrate on work. I thought she probably never wants to see me again. Still, I couldn't give up and I went to that park on my next day off. At the entrance of the park, I spotted him immediately. This time, I quietly sat on a bench that was a little closer. Catherine was writing something in the white book on her knee. It seemed to be a notebook, not a book. It's thick and looks like a diary. She didn't seem to notice me sitting there. There was no sign of her being flustered. Occasionally she would look up from the notebook to gaze at the cherry blossom. I sneakily stole glances at her profile. I must have been doing that for about 30 minutes. I mustered up courage to call out to her. Catherine, long time no see. In my words. Catherine, with a startled look, raises her face. She was surprised, but it wasn't just surprise on her face. For some reason she looked extremely frightened. I couldn't find the words in that moment of silence. Catherine quickly stood up from the bench, the white notebook on her knee slipped onto the ground. Catherine was backing away from me. By the time I slowly bent down to pick up the notebook, Catherine was no longer in sight. I could see Catherine running around the corner out of the park. She's avoiding me to the point of running away. Completely desolate, I collapsed onto the bench. I felt as though all strength that left my legs. It was like all the energy to live was drained out of me. Only the white notebook that Anne had been holding was left in my hands. I have to return it if it's important. I casually opened the notebook. Of course, I also had an ulterior motive to find some clue about Catherine's current situation. The notebook, thick as a diary, was densely filled with writing. There it was. The familiar handwriting of Catherine, yet its content was unbelievable. As I read on, my fingers trembled with every page turned. What was written was a daily log. It all started from that accident day. On the last page it read, "The cherry blossoms are beautiful today." Everyday activities were detailed. The time she woke up, who she met, what she ate, she wrote about, interesting things she saw on TV. Characteristics and names of people were thoroughly recorded. The content was too procedural to be called a diary. There was no other way to do it. Thinking of Catherine's feelings brought tears to my eyes. On the first page of the notebook, Catherine, waking from the accident, received a doctor's diagnosis. Initially, it seemed she had lost memory of the accident. Memory confusion after a significant accident isn't that uncommon. It would be temporary, the doctor said, but and realized something after that. Her memory was starting to fade more frequently. She consulted the doctor and underwent detailed examinations. There were abnormalities found in the right temporal lobe and the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory. This was the cause of the memory disorder. Catherine was aware that her memory was slowly but surely fading. Deciding to divorce while she could still remember me, till not trouble me, to not let me see her forget me. Her unwillingness to hurt me was put into words. Her sudden divorce paper was a form of kindness from her. The next day I took a day off work and sat on a bench in that parked the Central Park. I have to return this notebook to Catherine. I was certain that Catherine would show up. However, who appeared was a young man who seemed close to Catherine. Spotting me, he walked straight toward me, looking at the approaching man. He didn't seem older than a college student, tall, but still growing into his limbs. "That's Catherine's notebook, isn't it? Thank you for bringing it." The young man said so, bowing his head. Finally, I understood who he was. He had grown up so much in the short time I hadn't seen him. "You're Catherine's nephew, John, right?" Upon my words, he nodded. He seemed to have realized that I was Catherine's ex-husband. As I handed over the notebook, he received it with both hands. "I want to start over with Catherine. Can you arrange a meeting for me?" At my words, he froze his eyebrows. The look on his face was that of someone who just got roped into a complicated situation. "That's impossible, starting over after such a preface." He told me about Catherine's current condition. Catherine's memory disorder had progressed and now she can only retain her memory for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes she would forget everything, but still, "I believe I can start over," in one half-yelling tone. I said something that made John give in. I'd like to think it was my persistence that paid off. He asked me to wait a moment, then went to call Catherine. I feared I might be left hanging just like that, but still, I intended to wait until Catherine showed up. About 20 minutes later, Catherine and John appeared in the park. Upon seeing me, Catherine gave a little smile. It wasn't a friendly smile, but a forced one. "Thank you for picking up my notebook," she said. She seemed to have no memory of our previous encounter. She bowed her head as if meeting me for the first time. When I introduced myself, Catherine carefully wrote my name in her notebook so she wouldn't forget it. She repeated my name over and over under her breath, then slowly, Catherine's finger traced back through the pages. For a moment, her finger stopped and she let out a soft sigh. "So you were my husband?" she muttered. Those words made my heart jump. My name still existed in a corner of Catherine's memory. "Catherine, let's start over, it'll be all right," I said, looking straight into Catherine's eyes. I've never been so serious in delivering my words. Catherine's gaze fixed on me. There was no sign of confusion in her eyes. "We can't," and muttered softly. "In 30 minutes, you'll be a stranger to me. Please don't disregard my decision from half a year ago," she blurted all at once. It might sound presumptuous, but I had believed Catherine would accept me. I felt as though a bucket of cold water had been dumped on my head. Speechless, I stood still as Catherine began to tear pages out of her notebook. Once she finished tearing out most of the front half, she held it out to me. When I didn't take it, she pressed it against my chest. "This is the end," Catherine said, turning her back to me. All I could do was watch her walk away. The pages of the notebook Catherine gave me were filled with memories of us, how we met, started dating, and unmarried. Even she wrote the things she likes and dislikes about me. The last page expressed Catherine's anguished decision to leave me. I trampled on those feelings. Regret washed over me, but it was too late. There was only one path left for me. From then on, I became a friend of Catherine's. Whenever we crossed paths, I'd say hello and make small talk. Catherine, after a few times, revealed her memory to solder to me. In Catherine's world, after tearing out those front pages, I no longer existed as her husband. Everything would start from scratch. There's a chance Catherine might fall in love with me again someday. I intend to wait until that moment comes. It's such a miraculous moment ever arrives. I think I'll believe in the existence of God. My name is John. I work at a normal corporation. By the time I hit 28, most of my peers are looking to upskill, or in their personal lives, they start thinking about getting married. It's not that I lack ambition, but I feel like if I can maintain a stable lifestyle by doing my job decently, that's good enough for me. What about marriage, you ask? Well, I don't have anyone in my life right now. Romance and love are just not in the cards for me. I may sound cheerful, but let's face it, I'm not what most would consider good-looking. With this appearance, who would approach me? But I guess to my parents I might still look cute. Growing up, I was always told how adorable I was, so I never really thought of myself as an attractive. But that changed in the 4th grade. That was the first time someone mocked me. "You're so ugly." That day I went home and asked my mom, "Am I ugly?" And my usually cheerful mom, her face went red with anger. "Who said that about my precious, adorable son?" I was shocked by how fiery she became. "You look just like your dad, and it makes you even cuter," she said, hugging me and patting my head. But as time went on, I started to realize that I might not be that handsome after all. I've been told I look like my dad. Growing up, neighbors and mom's friends would often say you look just like your dad. Back then, I was proud to resemble my strong dad, but I guess they didn't mean it in a good way. Now my mom, she's incredibly beautiful. Long eyelashes, a perfectly straight nose, and she looks so young that sometimes people think she's my sister. My dad, on the other hand, they rugged kind of look. It's pretty obvious why take after. It really hit me during my teenage years. Looking in the mirror, I noticed my eyes resembled my mom's, but overall, I looked just like my dad. That was also when I realized how I ranked in terms of looks. But even in my teenage years, I had crushes. I once mustered the courage to confess my feelings to a girl named Nancy, but it hurt when she turned me down. "You're such a kind person, John, but I'm sorry." I was turned down. I later found out the reason she declined was indeed my looks. And soon after, Nancy started dating the most handsome guy in class. By that time, when I looked in the mirror, I could clearly see I'm definitely not like that guy, but you can't change your face. Sure, I've had my moments of self-consciousness, but if I don't focus on romance, it's no big deal. And here I am, already 28. I've pretty much given up on the idea of marriage. What about my dad, you say? Well, he just got extremely lucky. Not only did he get married, but he also won over a beauty like my mom. And if anyone's more smitten, it's my mom. My husband is the most handsome man in the US. No, in the whole world. I grew up hearing that all the time. And she still says it with a kind of love that's almost unfathomable. I'd say he's head over heels for her in a way that's downright baffling. It's nice that they get along well, but honestly, I doubt anyone would ever feel that way about me. Even though I'm not the best looking, I'm grateful for being cherished as much as I am. Such is my life as a working professional. Of course, I'm diligent in my duties. But sometimes the office buzz can be a bit much. Hey John, Dottie moment. She called and I quickly rushed to her desk. Sorry, can you sum this data up ASAP? I want to head to the client by early afternoon. Also John, you'll be joining me. Thanks. Before I could even reply with understood, Michelle was off. Then from around I heard. Lucky you. What? Aren't I the chosen one today? Damn, Johnson won today. Jealous. Such envious voices centered on me today. By chance, Michelle called for me. But whoever gets called by her becomes the envy of the office. Just the sound of her calling someone's name and all eyes are on her and that person. But it's mostly the male staff doing the looking. The female staff just give the men a cold look. Occasionally there's a sigh from the women, seemingly bewildered by the scene. Reason being, Michelle is a striking beauty with a fine complexion, clear features, and a petite face. Be it in the office or downtown, I doubt any man can resist a second glance. She's friendly, highly skilled, and efficient. She's adored even by the female staff and is quite the office icon. John, we may have an early lunch, but would you like to join me? We can head to the clients afterwards. I responded quickly, packing the necessary documents into my bag. No way. Lunch with the manager makes me jealous. Just being invited to lunch by Michelle and everyone's gaze felt even more piercing, but I couldn't let it bother me. Excuse me, I'll be back. Nodding to a senior I met eyes with, I quickly followed her. When you share tasks with Michelle occasionally, you get to have lunch together, everyone's waiting for their chance, and I'm well aware such was her popularity in the office. Of course I respect Michelle and think she's pretty, but not anything beyond that because I doubt she'd ever see someone like me in a romantic way. But it's not all fun and games at work. One day an issue arose at work, a problem that angered a client. Debate raged about who caused the issue, with senior staff passing the blame as the argument heated up. Somehow I was made the scapegoat. Honestly, I was barely involved and a senior was the one who messed up. With other tasks on my plate, squabbling over this seemed pointless. Being the junior in the team, I thought it best to just shoulder the blame. It was my mistake, I'm sorry. I want to apologize to the section manager. Oh, you again, he said, giving me a stern reprimand. Meanwhile, Michelle, who'd been out, seemed to have returned and overheard our conversation. Excuse me, section manager, is this about the complaint from company? I turned to see Michelle standing behind me as the section manager confirmed. She nodded a few times, signing deeply. Section manager, you're reprimanding the wrong person. After Michelle said that, she briefly told the section manager everything she knew and who had mainly caused the problem. As soon as the section manager's anger shifted, Michelle turned to the seniors. You guys, aren't you ashamed to push it onto a junior colleague? You only take credit for the good parts and need to stop covering your own backs, her voice echoed. You all need to reflect on this and go apologize to the client directly. Got it. When Michelle said that, the seniors weakly replied yes. As I stood in front of the section manager's desk in shock, Michelle turned this way and said, Section manager, I'll take John out for a bit, please take care of the rest. Then she told me let's go and physically took me away from that spot. I admired Michelle's retreating figure. I quickly followed her from behind. I could hear the section manager yelling at the seniors. Michelle, thank you, but why did you say it wasn't me? I leaked my true feelings, thinking that if she had left it alone, only I would have been scolded. I have an idea why you took the blame, even if it's just a guess, but you can't keep cleaning up after your seniors. She had known I was trying to take the blame. When she pointed that out, my eyes widened. Apparently, she had noticed some time ago that I was taking care of the aftermath. However, she didn't have concrete evidence and was watching the situation for a while. I found it strange, given your usual work ethic, I couldn't imagine you making so many mistakes. I know you understand the teamwork hierarchy, but doing such things can lower your reputation. Michelle reprimanded me. Your kindness isn't meant to be used like that, you know? But really, you haven't changed since then. While I was looking down reflecting, she mentioned since then. I wondered what she meant and looked at her face asking, I can't forget those times. She said with a slight smile and began to explain. One spring morning, while commuting to the office by train and bus, something happened on a crowded bus. As it reached a certain bus stop, a passenger trying to get off didn't know how to pay the fare. That person was from abroad, speaking some broken English, but mostly trying to ask something to the bus driver in his native language. The bus driver didn't understand, and the passenger seemed troubled. While everyone silently watched, someone from the middle of the bus said, "Excuse me," moving forward. While apologizing, that man explained to the passenger how to pay the fare. Thanks to that, the passenger was able to get off the bus without much delay. Then on another morning, amidst the busy hustle and bustle, a boy in an elementary school uniform was crying loudly. Suddenly, the same man who had helped the passenger from abroad on the bus quickly approached the boy and asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" He knelt down to the child's level and spoke with a smile. "Let's go to that police officer over there. It's okay, they'll help us. Let's go together, okay?" While reassuring the anxious child, the man led him to the police office. Even during the busy morning rush hour, he currently handled everything without getting flustered. She was seemingly really impressed, thinking I couldn't do that. Hearing that story, my face gradually turned red. Even as a new hire, you always showed kindness so readily. I remembered thinking how wonderful you were back then. I couldn't forget that sight. I was surprised when we ended up in the same department after your training. She said, smiling. It was definitely you, right, John? I've noticed you helping out others a few times since then. The thought of being watched without realizing it made me feel a bit embarrassed as we were chatting and walking. Before we knew it, we'd reached the company's lobby. We've come all the way here since we sneaked out. Why not go grab a coffee? Treating you to a cup won't make up for everything, but allow me to buy you one. Actually, as many as you want. I realized she had probably intended to take me out all along. Even if you're not the one making a mistake, being berated can wear you down. Perhaps she saw I was upset and wanted to cheer me up. After that incident, she watched over me even more, ensuring that I was never at a disadvantage. I don't mess up all that often, but when the seniors who used to be able to hide their mistakes started slipping up, their errors became more noticeable. Around that time, I had begun working more with Michelle due to the progress of my work and departmental assignments. The number of times Michelle called for me increased. Despite feeling the gaze of my peers and seniors, I kept my focus on the task at hand. Why is it always John? That's just not fair. We're definitely better looking. I should be the one next to Michelle, but she's @1. Michelle never accepts our invitations to go out for drinks. I was about to head into the break room for some coffee when I overheard these conversations from my seniors and colleagues. I hesitated, not sure if I should walk in. As I pondered what to do, scratching my head, I heard footsteps from behind. All right, you folks, if you've got time to chat here, get back to work. She clapped her hands, signaling everyone to leave. The guys murmured. Oh shoot. Quickly extinguishing their cigarettes and rushing back to their desks, Michelle caught my eye as I watched the entire scene. Did I scare you a bit? She asked playfully, sticking out her tongue with a shy grin. Both of us grabbed our coffees and just as we were about to get back to work, she said, "Oh John, are you free tonight? How about we grab dinner? We worked really hard yesterday, so it's kind of a thank you dinner. What do you say?" Invited by Michelle, I decided to join her for dinner. She has this habit of treating her subordinates to meals after finishing big projects. Given that I often work alongside her, we've had dinner a few times. Remembering the conversation from the seniors earlier, I thought it best to keep this dinner a secret. And on our way back from dinner, instead of heading straight to the subway, Michelle suggested how about we chat a bit more in the nearby park before heading home. I thought she wanted to discuss work for the next day. We sat on a bench in the park, toasting with coffee sweet bought from a vending machine. I took a sip, waiting for her to speak. But she just stared ahead. Showing no sign of starting a conversation, after a while, she turned to look at me, silently studying my face. "Is everything okay, Michelle?" When I called out like that, she let out a sigh. "It's stuff, isn't it? Even with all this effort to get noticed, it goes unnoticed." Confused, I must have looked like a question mark just popped above my head. Not sure if she noticed my puzzled face, she continued. "Well, I've always been focused on work, and it's been a long time since I've felt this way. But what about you, John? I know I'm older, but you probably prefer someone younger, right?" I tried to understand the meaning of her words, intently gazing into his eyes, but as usual, she was also staring right back into mine. Our eyes locked, and I was taken aback by her sparkling eyes and slightly blushed cheeks. But then she dropped a bombshell. "John, I like you, and I mean as more than just a workmate. Would you ever consider someone like me?" Feeling my heart race, my mind went completely blank. I could barely replay Michelle's words in my head. "What, are you serious?" Upon finally grasping what she had said, I let out a yell and involuntarily leaned backward. "Wait, this isn't some sort of prank, right?" It would be rather rude to assume, but I couldn't help but ask. Seeing my astonished face, Michelle laughed. "I guess you really didn't see it coming. Are you for real? I mean, hold on, does this mean I was probably the most flustered I had ever been in my life? Do you believe me now?" She gently took my trembling hands with both of hers. I could feel my face turning bright red. "Ah, are you blushing? That's so cute. You look even more adorable." "Wait, cute? This isn't some sort of joke." "Why me? Tell me." "You're very cute. But more importantly, I love how genuine and kind you are." "Do you not like me?" "No, it's not that. I mean, I feel like I don't deserve someone like you, but my body can't lie." My hands had gripped her hands back, but then reality hit me. "Hold on a second, Michelle. Think about it. People are going to see us and think it's like Beauty and the Beast. You have no idea how gorgeous you are. And me, I feel so undeserving standing next to you." When I said that, the strength of Michelle's grip weakened and a troubled look crossed her face. "People have always told me I'm pretty, but I've always had my own insecurities. It's been tough being a female manager. Some say I got to where I am because of my looks, not my skills. Despite everything, I worked hard and proved them wrong. And the kindness I've received from men. Most had ulterior motives. But you, John, you're different. You're genuine, sincere, and the kindest person I've ever met. That's what attracted me." Saying this, she squeezed my hand once more. "Do you not feel embarrassed?" Having me by her side, I conveyed my deepest insecurity. "Why would I be? If you were my boyfriend, I'd brag about you to everyone." She smiled at me warmly. "Look, I can't change my face, but I'll do my best to be a man worthy of you, Michelle. Who could have seen this coming for someone like me, who had given up on even dating, let alone getting married?" A new chapter had begun. For a while, I kept pinching my cheek every morning, wondering if this was a dream or reality. Of course, in the beginning, I often doubted why me. She always called me cute and I could feel her love from her smiles and gestures. Knowing she chose me gave me a bit of confidence. But it was never enough to gain more self-assurance. I started hanging the gym. My once skinny frame began to bulk up and my muscles started showing. The more built I became, the more I looked like my dad. I'd become confident and at ease with myself. My newfound confidence was noticeable to others. "You've been glowing with confidence lately," a female coworker once told me. We didn't hide our relationship, but we also didn't make it public to keep our professional lives separate. No one would ever guess that someone like me was dating the department's. No, the company's top beauty. I'd say it's almost impossible to notice. Sometimes I'd see some good-looking colleagues approaching Michelle and I'd suddenly step in. She teased me about my jealousy, but hey, I'm her boyfriend. A little jealousy is natural, right? Then, after about a year of keeping our relationship under wraps, during a morning briefing, our section manager called Michelle and me to stand in front of everyone. I still remember that moment, everyone's faces thinking we were about to receive an award or something. "At your leisure," said the section manager. And with that signal, we announced our engagement. Then there was a silence for about 5 seconds, followed by a chorus of startled shouts sounding almost like screams. Resonating with what? Michelle, trying to lighten the mood, said, "For professional reasons, I'll keep my last name as Taylor. Thanks for understanding." But as they saw the ring shining on her left finger, a few male colleagues looked as if they were about to faint. In just one day, it felt like I heard a lifetime's worth of "no way." Why him? About a year and a half after the engagement announcement, my wife went on maternity leave. By that time, I had gained confidence in my work performance improved significantly. Of course, I no longer had to clean up after my colleagues. The label of being incompetent was shed with my accomplishments and the misunderstandings with my bosses were cleared up. After her maternity leave, I was promoted as manager. Work's going great and home life absolutely wonderful. The unexpected joys that came into my life have warmed my entire being. By the way, not too long ago, I finally mustered the courage to ask my mom, "Why did you choose Dad?" Turns out, the reason my mom fell for my dad and the reason my wife fell for me was the same. My dad was always kind to everyone and would suddenly help those in need, which my mom noticed countless times. And back then, even though my mom was quite the catch, it seemed the only man who approached her without ulterior motives was my dad. Maybe that's why my wife and mom get along so well. Now instead of a mother-daughter relationship, they seem more like best friends. While some families might struggle with in-law issues, it looks like we're in the clear. They often tell each other we're so lucky to have such kind husbands and brag about their husbands. Hearing that makes my dad and I a bit embarrassed, but I guess it's also a kind of happiness. And then we were blessed with a beautiful baby. She looks like my wife, with sharp and clear features. I might be a bit biased, but I'm genuinely concerned about her future. I'll cherish and raise her with all my love alongside my wife. How did you like today's story? Your subscriptions and hitting the like button would be a huge motivation for my content creation. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. See you in the next video. I'm Ryan Sawyer, 28 years old. During my time in college, a friend and I started a small gaming company and now I'm the CEO of the company. Our cell phone app game became a major hit, and before we knew it, our company expanded exponentially. I often think to myself how fortunate I am to have found success doing something I love. In fact, I've been lucky since the day I was born. I was born into a relatively affluent family and raised with love by my parents. Whether it was academics or hobbies, my parents allowed me to pursue anything I took interest in to the fullest extent. I really don't think I can thank them enough. Hey Ryan, you're free for the drinking party tonight, right? Just as I was about to shut down my computer after checking my accumulated emails, the door to my office opened. Popping his head and was Tom, my college buddy and the co-founder of our company. Tom is the vice president of our company. Our positions as CEO and vice president were actually decided over a game, so those positions don't really hold much power. Sure, I'll be there, I replied. When I responded, Tom playfully frowned and made a face as if he was not pleased. I kind of wish you wouldn't come. You always end up stealing all the girls. It's an old joke that Tom always makes during our drinking parties. Apparently, I'm considered quite handsome, and coupled with my high academic qualifications, tall stature and high income, it seems I tend to attract attention. Sometimes the gazes of women at these parties make me feel a bit uncomfortable. Don't say that. You know very well that my work is my sweetheart. I don't have anyone I'd call a significant other. I occasionally have dinner and spend the night with a few individuals. That's all. Tom often warns me that one day I'll get hurt, but that's just how I choose to live. The notion of romantic love has long left me since high school. Grabbing my cell phone, I followed Tom out of the office. I wondered who I'd meet today. That thought made me a little excited. This gathering of young entrepreneurs is a regular event, although it's difficult to attend every time. Make it a point to show up as often as I can. It's a great place for us to exchange information. Moreover, many people bring along cute girls, making it a venue for new encounters. Today too, there were cute girls such as the executive assistant of a major trading company, CEO, and a PR girl from a famous clothing brand. While everyone is enjoying themselves, I can tell that the girls are sizing us guys up. It can't be helped considering the circumstances. But it also feels as though this approach wastes the potential of these encounters. If we could let our guards down and speak honestly, maybe some amazing chemistry could happen. With that thought in mind, I spent the evening making small talk with the girls. The first round of the party was decently lively, and a momentum was building to head to the after party. I idly watched as the organizers debated in front of the restaurant on where to go next. "Hey, Ryan, Tom, let's make a quiet exit." The one who whispered this to me was no other than Ethan, the CEO of a major apparel company a bit older than us. Ethan was the leader-like figure among young entrepreneurs. Even from a guy's perspective, he's a cool guy and I look up to him. I wouldn't dare to turn down an invitation from such a person. Tom and I exchanged glances and quietly slipped out of the group. "Just turn off your phones, it's less hassle," said Ethan, who was confidently walking ahead as he looked back. "It must be to avoid getting searched for. As long as we turn off our phones, no one can catch us." I felt a sense of temporary freedom. The bustling streets on Friday night were lively. We threaded through the crowd smoothly and found ourselves in front of a certain building. It was a building that housed a members-only upscale club. I had heard rumors, but it wasn't the kind of place novices like us could enter. "Ethan, we're going in here. It's a members-only place." In front of the glossy black door stood a security guard in black who deeply bowed when he noticed Ethan. Ethan, it seemed, was a member. That made sense to me. Ethan being well informed must be due to him frequently visiting such places and keeping his ears open to various stories. "I got introduced to this place recently and became a member," he said. "Apparently you can get in if you're with a member." So Tom and I ventured into this unknown world. Inside, the lighting was cleverly dimmed, making the commentary design look even more chic. Beautiful women were seated at each table, engaging in low whisper-like conversations with the guests. Just a glance and I could spot faces of known CEOs and owners. It felt like a social gathering of the elite, and I started to feel a bit tense. Ethan, who seemed used to all of this, casually introduced us to the beautiful hostess. The elegant hostess said I'm happy to see young people here and welcomed us warmly. Honestly, I've never been to places with girls. I've never been to a strip club. We were guided to velvet sofas and immediately a girl came and sat next to us. She handed out a business card with her nickname on it and I hurriedly started searching for mine. The girl found my confusion amusing and let out a little laugh. Ethan seemed to have someone in mind as he looked like he was waiting for her. His slightly anxious profile made him look like a boy. "Ethan, thank you for always coming." A girl elegantly sat next to Ethan, saying this as she approached. Her slim shoulders were revealed by a navy blue dress that suited her fair complexion well. Nina, we've kept you waiting. I've brought along some juniors today, Ethan said, introducing us to Nina. Nina bowed her head to us with a cheerful smile. Of course, Nina would likely be her work name, but it suited her well. Nice to meet you. I'm Nina. When she raised her face after saying that, I caught sight of Nina's face and almost let out a surprise. Oh, the person standing before me was my high school friend, Lisa Thompson. She looked different, but I was sure it was her. Wait, Lisa Thompson, right? I tentatively asked. Nina responded with a grin, evading my question by saying who knows, perhaps it might be a nuisance to mention her real name here. So I decided not to push any further. Nina is apparently a popular hostess at this club. Even after she joined us at our table, she was called to various others, busily moving around for greetings and send-offs. Despite the hectic environment, Nina never let her smile fade. She generously offered her beautiful smile to everyone. The woman in front of me was the exact opposite of the lease line. You. After all, I've only seen her smile once. The impressions were so far apart that perhaps I had the wrong person by the time we were leaving. I had come to this conclusion: the high school library that smelled of old bucks. She, a library committee member, was always seated at the counter, always expressionless, with a cold side profile. For some reason, I just can't forget her. In the end, I left the club without verifying the truth, being sent off with a broad smile. Ethan seems quite smitten with Nina, and on the way home, I was regaled with stories about her. Ethan, would you mind inviting me the next time you go to the club? At this, Ethan looked a bit surprised. He knows well that I usually don't frequent such places, so it must have been unexpected, but he quickly smiled and readily agreed. From the bottom of my heart, I wanted to keep visiting the club until at least I uncovered the true identity of Nina. That day, I was confused as Nina and Lisa kept appearing alternately. Until I fell asleep, Ethan was kind enough to keep his promise with me. Over the weekend, he contacted me and we decided to go back to the club together. On this day, Nina wasn't there when we arrived as she was accompanying a regular customer. Ethan immediately called over the madam, introduced me politely, and suggested that I should definitely become a member of the club. I didn't expect him to go that far, and I was deeply touched by Ethan's kindness. The madam also agreed to my membership, saying if it's Ethan's recommendation in this unexpected situation, I gained a status at the club. I was torn about whether or not to tell Ethan the truth. While I was contemplating, Nina appeared with a regular customer. Nina in a simple dress reminded me of Lisa from our high school days. Nina quickly disappeared into the backstage for makeup in a costume change. I unconsciously followed a retreating figure with my eyes. Ethan seemed to notice it. If Nina is your objective, give me a break. I can't win against you, Ethan jokingly said while laughing, but I noticed his eyes weren't laughing. He must be serious about Nina. Don't be ridiculous, she's way out of my league, I replied with a laugh. Ethan muttered in a small voice, I don't know. We chatted with the substitute girls while drinking until Nina was free. All the hostesses of this high-class club were amazing. Each one was a skilled conversationalist and had a variety of topics to talk about. There was no way they'd let us, the customers, get bored. Moreover, each of them had the beauty and style of a model. I was almost distracted while I was chatting with the substitute girls. Ethan's phone rang. He was about to hang up, but his complexion changed slightly when he saw the caller scream. I need to take this outside, he said and left the club. It must have been an important call. The problem was that I was left alone. This was only my second time visiting a place like this, and I was left feeling out of place, unsure of what to do. Ethan returned after about 5 minutes, but apparently some problem had occurred at his company. He said he had to return to the office immediately and left the club reluctantly just before leaving. He told me that he had paid for everything that day. Just as Ethan left, Nina came to my table. Sorry for the wait. It's your second visit, right? Thank you so much. Nina said with a smile as she smoothly replaced my glass. Sure enough, I saw glimpses of the lease. I knew when the helper left the table and it was just Nina and me. I decided to ask her directly. You're Lisa, right? The one who was on the library committee in high school. Instantly, Nina's smile faded from her face. It's a mixed blessing to have good intuition and a good memory, Ryan, she said. There was Lisa, the girl I knew so well. Even with her makeup done beautifully and dressed up in a dress, her cold side profile was the same as before. I felt a little relieved. I wonder why I can't ask why. I said the least I knew was a top student in school. She was the kind of student who was expected to receive a scholarship for university, but according to Ethan, she had dropped out of high school and was working hard. Please don't be interested in me. Don't interfere with my work because of your nostalgia. That's a meaningless emotion, Lisa said while avoiding my gaze. Then she raised her hand towards the waiter. Please take him home. Thank you. Just like that, I was forced to leave the club by Lisa. Just before the elevator door closed, she smiled and said don't ever come back, making me feel her rejection. That night, I had a nostalgic dream. Lisa was sitting at the counter in the high school library. What are you reading? At first, I spoke to her casually. I think it was just a greeting for me. Lisa glared at me with her eyes turned up. Are you borrowing or are you returning? Lisa asked me without any hint of a smile. In a business-like manner. It was the first time a girl I had approached had reacted so unsociably and I was a little surprised. Looking back now, I think I was an annoying guy with an excessive self-confidence because I knew I was popular. I who had no bucks to borrow or return. Was at a loss for words. Then, as if she was disgusted, she sighed and dropped her eyes back to the book she had been reading. It felt like I was being ignored and it annoyed me. As a library committee member. Don't you have any recommended books? I persistently called out to her, looking annoyed. Lisa looked up at me and placed an in-service sign on the counter. What kind of book are you looking for? She came out from behind the counter and asked me. I, who hadn't thought about anything, hastily repeated a book you recommend. Then she disappeared into the aisle of bookshelves. In less than 2 minutes, she had found a book. This is my recommendation. The book she handed me was a paperback titled Stories of Thoroughbreds. When I took the book she offered, she went back inside the counter. No facial expression during the lending process. I think I was just fixating on things like the whiteness of her nape when she looked down, or the line of her joint profile. This is how my interactions with Lisa began. Even though she told me she didn't want to see me again, I can't help but be concerned about Lisa. I wonder why she became a hostess, why she dropped out of high school. If there's anything I can do to help her, no matter how small, I thought I'd like to be there for her. After some thought, I decided to call the madam and request to come in with Nina. Nina wouldn't be able to refuse if the request came from the madam. It may seem a bit sneaky, but it couldn't be helped. As I expected, I received a return call from Nina. This is Nina, thank you for coming with me. Hearing her obviously fake cheerful voice, I was taken aback. She decided the place and time for our meeting as if it was a business call. And then hung up the phone. From the beginning to the end of the call, Lisa had been Nina. I felt a bit down, thinking maybe I was just causing her trouble. But even while feeling down, I was excited to see Lisa and my work for the day went by swiftly. I was amazed at my own raw emotions, but I couldn't suppress them because they were my honest feelings. When I spotted her waiting for me at our meeting place, I felt like I could burst into dance. I was simply happy to see her. Sorry, did I keep you waiting? When I checked the time, it was 10 minutes earlier than our agreed meeting time. No, I just got here. She responded with a radiant smile as Nina. The next moment, all expression vanished from Nina's face. Perhaps my confusion showed on my face. Nina gave a slight smile, lifting the corners of her mouth just a bit. Do I need to keep up my business smile? It's not free. You know, she was sharp and sarcastic. The old Lisa was there. I felt more at ease with her now than with Nina's fake smile. When we entered the private room of the Vietnamese restaurant I had reserved, Lisa seemed a bit more relaxed. She didn't need to act like Nina when we were out of the public eye, especially not in front of me. I was surprised to think we would meet again in a place like that. I started, to which Lisa responded it was an unfortunate coincidence. I started working for the money. It was the quickest way to make some, Lisa said, her face blank. She acted as if she was prepared for me to dig into her roots and ask questions. Today, anyway, she shared what had happened since I had graduated high school. The fact is, Lisa and I have been in contact for less than a year. It was when I was a senior and Lisa was a freshman in high school. We hadn't been in touch since I graduated. Lisa's dropping out of high school was apparently due to her father's disappearance. He found a younger woman and abandoned his family, Lisa said bitterly. Her mother, who was brought up like a princess, had been married against her parents' wishes and was a woman completely incapable of living independently. Lisa was the one who supported the family, had lost the mainstay of the family and could not rely on her grandparents' home. She had 3 younger brothers. It seems. In order to support her mother and 3 brothers still in compulsory education, she decided to drop out of high school and work. Initially she held several part-time jobs. Her brothers also helped out with the household finances, doing things like delivering newspapers. Lisa said that her mother was too busy lamenting to be of any help. As soon as she turned 18 and could work in the nightlife work, Lisa jumped into this world. It started from a casual bar, then she was head-hunted by the madam of her current workplace. Have you got all your answers now? I was surprised too to find out you've become a CEO. Lisa said, finishing her story. Down her ginger ale. I think I'm just too fortunate. I always feel insecure not knowing how much of what I've achieved is actually due to my own abilities. Oddly enough, the anxiety that I hadn't been able to express to anyone fell out of my mouth. Lisa looked at me with a surprised expression. But sorry, forget it. It's just my ramblings. Embarrassed, I tried to play it off as a joke. Listening to complaints is also part of my job. It's not for free though, Lisa said with a gentle smile, which I didn't think was her usual business smile. It was the smile of Lisa that I had seen only once during our school days. Then we chatted a little bit about the old days. I think in reality, my head was so messed up that I don't remember what we talked about. But just before we entered the club, Lisa said something that stuck with me. Look, I'm not ashamed of who I am now. I just don't want people who knew me in the past to see me as I am now. I feel like that's disrespectful to the people at the club and to the customers, but I can't help feeling that way. Before I could say what, Lisa forcefully pushed open the door of the club. A subdued buzz punctuated by quiet laughter came from inside the club, accompanied by music, the dimly lit floor, and the scent of expensive whiskey. As soon as Lisa stepped foot into the club from the door, she transformed into Nina. She looked at me with a full smile. Please wait for me at the club, I feel like drinking champagne tonight, she said charmingly before disappearing into the backstage. The bartender gave her a smile, saying she knows how to get what she wants. Huh. Yeah, I guess so. All I could do was return an embarrassed smile. It felt like everyone had some kind of inner contradiction that they couldn't fully come to terms with. It's been a few weeks since I started going out with Lisa. I've been wishing to visit the club often, but work has plunged into its peak season. Both my team and I have been pulling all-nighters. I'm in no shape to go out devoid of energy and motivation. Finally, things settled down yesterday. Just as I was about to see Lisa. After a long while, I got a call from Ethan Mann. I proposed to Nina yesterday. I haven't gotten a response yet. I don't have the courage to go to the club alone. Can you come with me today? I was surprised at his uncharacteristically timid voice, but I was also shocked by what he said. I never thought he would seriously consider being with Lisa. I've spent a lot on Nina. I don't think she'll refuse. Ethan said that no doubt there's no customer who has spent more on Nina than he has. But just because of that, I felt like he was taking Lisa for granted, thinking she couldn't refuse. I have something to tell you that I've been hiding. I thought I couldn't deceive Ethan any longer. Of course, I had no intention of deceiving him from the beginning. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. I have a bad feeling, but let's hear it. Ethan probably had a hunch. His voice tone dropped a bit as he said that. He probably invited me to the bar today as a countermeasure against me. Nina and I have known each other since high school, and she's the one I've always had feelings for. I don't want to interfere with your proposal, but please give me a chance to. I thought it was rude to say such a thing to a mentor I deeply respect. But there are moments in life when you can't back down. I have often heard Nina talk about you. I see, so that's what's going on. Ethan said calmly, showing no anger. And he said he would give me a chance. It's Nina's decision who she chooses. If she chooses me, don't complain, I won't either. Thank you, Ethan, whom I respected was fair and manly to a fault. He told me to go to the club first and confess my feelings to Nina. And I was on the verge of tears. We hung up after agreeing to meet at the club. Over the past few weeks, when I couldn't see Lisa, I've been preparing something and headed to the bar. The bar just opened was still sparsely populated, and when I asked for Nina, she came to the table right away. She seemed a bit thinner than the last time I saw her. Long time no see, Ryan. I thought you'd forgotten about me, Nina. With a fake smile said. I asked directly, are you going to accept Ethan's proposal? The hand she was using to make the whiskey and soda stopped. I saw her fingertips trembling slightly. The sound of ice falling into a glass resounded in the silence. Not a bad deal, you know, he's rich and kind. He only has eyes for me. While not looking my way, Nina proceeded to mix herself a whiskey and soda. I've got money too, you know. I almost despised myself for the vulgarity of the words that came out of my mouth and my words. The fake smile disappeared from her face. Nina looked at me, her eyes challenging. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. Marry me. She looked at me with contempt after I uttered the same phrase again. Then slowly, she took off the ring from her right hand and placed it in front of me. An expensive-looking diamond ring. I remembered the boastful way then had announced it was a gift from him. I come with a high price tag, you know? Lisa's mouth twists into a self-deprecating line. I realized that I had hurt her, but I couldn't back down here either. I handed her what I had prepared. I might not have as much money as Ethan, and we've only just reconnected, but I want you to look at me again, just like before. I want you to recommend books to me and teach me about worlds I don't know. As she saw what I had handed her, her eyes widened. It was an information guide for the high school equivalency test, a pamphlet for distance learning, and a brochure for online universities. The last was a brochure for a course to become a librarian. She carefully placed each pamphlet on her lap, one by one. Her slender fingers traced over the covers of the pamphlets. Maybe it's time for you to chase your own dreams. I want to see you achieve yours. If we're talking marriage, I think I'd be the better bargain. Back in high school, I once asked Lisa who served on the library committee. In theory, the library counter duties were supposed to rotate among committee members. But whenever I went there, it was always Lisa sitting behind the counter. I love this place, so I switched duties with other members. I want to be a librarian in the future, so consider this my practice, she said. I still remember when Lisa, who was usually expressionless, shyly shared her dream with me. You still remember that you're strange. While she uttered the words with some bitterness, Lisa's eyes were glossy with tears. I don't know why I couldn't forget. It's strange even to me, but I've always liked you. I thought I could finally confess to her after over a decade. I had planned to confess to her on graduation day, but she wasn't in the library on the day of graduation. I couldn't meet her, so I remember leaving a small note on the library counter and leaving. I'll tell you I love you when we meet again. The words I muttered were the ones I had left in the note for her. The fact that she remembered those words was more joyous than anything. I felt as if the stop clock had finally started moving. Years later, I stood in front of a large library. It was a chilly day, cold enough for snow, and I could feel the cold creeping up from my feet. The staff entrance opened and light spilled out. Sorry to keep you waiting, you must be cold. Lisa took both my hands, blowing warm breath on them. I'm okay, I replied, holding her hands and tucking them into the pockets of my coat. It's warm when we're like this. Lisa smiled shyly and nodded. The smile that was now directed at me wasn't for business. Feeling like the luckiest man in the world, having her priceless smile all to myself, I cherish this moment. It's been a while since the last time, so it might not fit. Don't worry, we'll make it work, just relax. I said this to my ex-wife whom I thought I had parted with as she looked worriedly at me. Think it'll fit? It just barely did. Sharing this conversation with my ex-wife, I cherished this happy moment and couldn't help but smile. My name is Matt, I work in ID, feeling the strain of sitting at a computer every day. I've recently started walking a block to get some exercise. Today I left work early and the sky is bathed in the colors of the setting sun. Walking down a quiet main street, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a shop window. I made a wry smile and my slightly wrinkled suit and checked my hair. There was an empty earrings hole. Maybe it's starting to close up. I really should wear something in it. I smirked. It's not prohibited at work, and I thought maybe I should wear something subtle. Realizing I had finally come to terms with the thought, I laughed at myself. The reason I got earrings, it was because of my wife. Note my ex-wife Karen, who couldn't wear a wedding ring all the time. She wanted to wear earrings instead. When she said she couldn't wear it, it might be misleading according to Karen. Wearing it on my finger, I might lose it and it gets dirty, doesn't it? I want to take care of the ring you got me, Matt, she said. So we decided to wear less tarnishing earrings in place of our wedding rings. Neither Karen or I had ever gotten earrings before and we both shouted in pain when we did. Together, we continue to wear subtle Yellowstone earrings. Seeing ouch and it hurts to say it myself might sound boastful, but Karen is stunningly beautiful, kind-hearted, and responsible. We attended the same college and she even led a club. We dated from our college years and she's always been there pulling me along. And that's how I fell for her. After getting jogs, we get married and lived happily for 3 years. To clarify, it's not that we grew to dislike each other and then divorced. The reason for our divorce was, in a way, a difference in values or perspective. To put it simply, intimacy faded. In our 3rd year of marriage, we both settled down at work and I wanted kids soon. Karen said she loved children and I believed ours would be adorable. But just as I had that thought, Karen began to distance herself from me. I thought it might be an emotional or physical problem on my end, so I initially dismissed it. But when it became clear that she was avoiding intimacy, I decided to talk to Karen. Karen, you've been avoiding me lately. Can you tell me why? You know, communication shouldn't be one-sided. If I've done something to upset you, I'd like to fix it. At that time, I thought there might be an issue with me. The two of us get along well. And Karen is always sweet to me, so I thought maybe it's a matter of technique. But then I received an unexpected response from Karen. It's not that you have a problem. Really, Jess, I'm sorry. I should have talked to you. You see, I don't want kids. I felt like I've been struck by lightning. Maybe it's old-fashioned, but I thought having kids after getting married was the norm. But you like kids, right? You used to volunteer and play with them. I love kids, but I don't want one of my own. I'm sorry. I knew you wanted kids and I couldn't say it. I thought maybe after we got married I'd want them, but I just can't. This is my fault too, but we didn't have a proper discussion about the child. I just assumed Karen wanted them too. I know I messed up now, but I didn't think so at the time. I love Karen, of course, but is there a point in a marriage without children? I started to think that it wouldn't be different from just being lovers. We talked about it many times after, but we never saw eye to eye. If we stayed together, I feared we'd grow resentful and end up hating each other. So, wanting to avoid that toxic environment, we divorced. I'm grateful it happened before we started despising each other, but I was lonely and because of that, I took off the earring I wore with Karen along with the ring. The earring hole from before our marriage hasn't fully closed yet. Perhaps because I wore it for so long. It's been a year since our divorce. Maybe it's time to move on. With that thought, I headed to a jewelry store to buy a new piece. Why not a general store? It felt awkward to enter one alone. As a man in a jewelry store, it's easy to pretend I'm buying a gift for a girlfriend. And I thought if I'm going to wear something, it might as well be good quality. Inside the jewelry store, there were sparkling gems everywhere. In one corner, there was an earring section. I wanted something simple like before with a stone. While browsing, a sales clerk approached me. Can I help you find something? Oh, yes. I'm looking for a simple earring. Wait. To my surprise, the sales associate was Karen. She seemed just as shocked. Apparently she had switched jobs and now works here. It's been a while. A year. Have you been? Oh, you too? Did you change your makeup? I adjusted it for work. And you? It seems like you didn't iron your suit. It's all wrinkled. After a long separation and having not spoken since our divorce, Karen and I were able to talk just like before. I had bought a new earring, this time with an orange stone, and glanced at the store's clock. It was exactly 5 p.m. It seemed Karen was just getting off work. How about dinner? There's a new Italian place nearby. Oh, I've been curious about that place. Let's go. Karen and I entered the restaurant together, having been a year since we last met. We spent our time reminiscing about the good old days, talking about work, sharing stories of our blunders. Even though we sat down for dinner, we got so caught up in our conversation that before we knew it, it was pitch dark outside. I really should head home, but to be honest, I feel like there's so much more to talk about. It seemed Karen felt the same as she invited. Why don't you come over to my place? It's close by. I didn't have a reason to refuse, and it didn't seem like Karen had a new boyfriend. With both of us having the day off tomorrow, I ended up staying at Karen's. Things might have progressed quickly, but considering we spent 3 years of married life together, it just felt natural. We talked until the next day. So one of my juniors mistook gravy for coffee. It was hilarious. I burst out laughing, haha. Why do you even have gravy at work? It felt good, it was as if we were back in our college days and it put my heart at ease. This past year the loneliness I had felt was gone. I realized I still love Karen and now I see how selfish my thinking was back then. Karen, Joe, what's up? I know it's late, but I want to apologize to you. If I missed this chance, I might never be able to convey my feelings. I looked straight into Karen's eyes. Karen seemed to have an idea of what I was about to say as she gazed back at me. I was foolish. I was so obsessed with the idea of having kids that I never considered your feelings. You're the one who would carry and give birth to our child. It would be a huge responsibility for you. And yet I never had a proper discussion with you about it. I'm truly sorry. I bowed my head to Karen. Being able to talk to her again made me realize the significance of her presence in my life at this point, even if we didn't have kids, as long as I can be with Karen again. That's all I want. I also wanted to talk about that and Matt owe you an apology too. I was scared to tell you the real reason I didn't want children. Karen began to speak softly. You know I have a younger sister, right? Yeah. There's quite an age gap between you two, right? 6 years. When I was 6, I heard her. The story from when Karen was 6 years old continued. Karen deeply adored her newborn baby sister. One day when their mom stepped out briefly, the baby began to cry. Back then I thought she was missing mom and felt lonely, so even though I was told not to, I wanted to comfort her and picked her up. However, a 6-year-old girl can't suddenly carry a 2 or 3-month-old baby. Trying to console her crying sister, Karen tried to imitate how adults hold babies, but during that attempt she accidentally injured her sister. I lost balance because I was being careful with her wobbly head. She hit her arm against the wall, thankfully. It wasn't a serious injury, but one wrong move and she might have broken a bone or gotten more hurt. I shouldn't have tried to carry a baby with such a delicate neck, especially at my young age. Seeing her cry continuously because of the pain scared me. I realized how fragile babies truly are. After that incident, Karen developed a trauma towards holding infants. I love kids, but I can't help but fear that I might hurt them again. It was terrifying as Karen lowered her head and whispered these words. She looked up at me, but something changed in me in the past year since her divorce. It turns out that Karen's sister, April, had given birth. It was around 6 months ago, and Karen met her nephew. April asked me to hold him. I resisted with all my might, but April said, "You're still haunted by the past, aren't you? I know you love kids. It's okay. As long as you love the child, you won't hurt him because you're a kind soul." Taking advice from a nurse on how to hold the baby, Karen held her nephew and was captivated by his angelic smile. He was so adorable and delicate. Holding him, I felt how precious a baby truly is, and it reminded me of you, Matt. I did want to have a baby with you. After the divorce, I regretted it. I just listened quietly, deeply respecting Karen for overcoming her long-held trauma. Karen somehow managed to overcome the trauma she had been carrying for so long. What might seem trivial to others was a significant step for her. Knowing she thought of me as she took that step warmed my heart. I know it's presumptuous, but I want to be with you again. I feel the same way. Our eyes met. The time span of the year showed us how much we genuinely cared for each other. I still love Karen and she still loves me. I want us to be together again. That's what I felt, haha. I guess if we're getting back together, I didn't need to buy these earrings. I took out the earrings with orange stone I bought today for my back. If I'm with Karen, I can wear what I used to every day. Shrugging about its newfound redundancy, she said. Actually, I bought the same one. What? Karen laughed as she took out the exact earrings. If we're getting remarried, our commemorative earrings should be our second set, right? I couldn't help but laugh. It had been a while since we wore earrings. Come to think of it, Karen was the one who put on my previous earrings. Hey, put it on for me, please. Karen shot her, pleading. I found it endearing and moved closer to her, saying, all right, but it's been so long, it might not fit. It's okay, everything will be fine, just relax. I said as I touched Karen's earlobe and put an earring through it. You think it'll go through? It was a close call. Really glad it wasn't closed up. Now Karen puts an earring for Meyer. The new earrings feel foreign, but they are more than perfect to commemorate our new beginning. Years later, in my arms, there was a tiny life. Thank you. Really. Thank you, Karen. Oh, stop. You are crying too much. After remarrying, we had decided after discussions to have a child. Of course, we didn't push it. We just hoped for it. So for the first few years of our marriage, it was just the two of us. Then this year, Karen's pregnancy was discovered after a difficult labor. Karen let me hold our daughter. We'll have to take the earrings out for a while. It's risky if she pulls on them. True, the holes might close up this time. Karen, laughing joyfully, gazed at me and our daughter. Seeing her so happy and our daughter's innocent smile surrounded by the two of them, I feel truly blessed. If they close up, let's get earrings matching ones with our daughter. Haha, sounds good. But what if she throws them away during her rebellious phase? I turn pale. I can't bear the thought of being rejected by such a cute daughter, but it's a rite of passage for all fathers. However, this I can promise: no matter what, I will protect both of you. I vowed this to my smiling daughter.